such as, there are a lot of affective sorts of benefits perhaps, so students getting explicit instruction. I mean, that you had the belonging and so forth, but there are many other facets as well.
Yeah, so just to repeat, Marianne, as you do further research on transparency, are you going to look for other outcomes, psychosocial outcomes?
Thank you for that great question. Yes, and is my answer to that. So yes, we are, and we need your help. The charts and graphs that you saw are mainly looking at groups of questions together, questions about belonging or confidence or particular skills. But we are sitting on a mountain of data that correlate with tens of thousands of students' answers to 44 aspects of their learning experience, 44 questions about aspects of their learning. So we are working to share this data in an online web portal so that education researchers around the country could join the research team and tap into it to help us analyze further. And we've just begun that process now. I think we added about 12 members of the research team just last month. And we're working to unveil the online web portal in November at the Professional Organizational Development Network annual meeting in Louisville, Kentucky. But if you have education researchers on your campus who might be interested in joining our research team, helping us analyze aspects of this data that apply to you urgently, then please let me know, or let Susan know to let me know. But somehow, please communicate that, because we would love to welcome more folks to the research team and go after that sort of analysis.
Mm-hmm. Tracy, you have any follow-up there, or did that answer your question?
Well, that did answer my question, and I hope that I'll be able to see you at PUD.
Great, good. We have another one. I may have missed this. Sarah Donovan said, but are you examining which disciplines have greater problems with transparency?
In fact, we are right now with a small group of Southwestern institutions putting together a National Science Foundation application to see if we might be able to look specifically at STEM students at the intro level, especially underserved STEM students, to learn more about their retention in STEM disciplines. So yes, we have the capacity to look at specific disciplines. We've asked students, in addition to the 44 questions about their learning, we've asked them about 20 questions about who they are, so we can disaggregate and analyze that way as well.
That's great. Melanie Borrego says, if you send me the info, our assessment office might be interested in joining in some of that research. And from TJ Bruvard, hi TJ, has there been enough data gathered to see has had not only an impact on retention, but also on completion?
So we are up to year 2 of gathering that data, and we need to get up to year 4 to know about completion. Except for if it's a 2-year college, we could say something about completion very soon at the end of this academic year. But we're working toward that capacity.
Great. And from Dan McInerney, hi Dan, apologies if I missed this question earlier, Marianne. Have you examined how thoroughly students themselves are able to absorb, appropriate, and internalize the language of learning outcomes and proficiencies so they develop a more persuasive narrative of their educational experience? Thinking of this in particular in the context, say, of a job interview.
That sounds to me like a good research project, Dan. All that we have so far is anecdotal in terms of faculty who have tried this and then published essays or articles about their experience. They believe that students are better metacognitive analysts of their own experience now. But we have not structured a way that we could quantify or measure that beyond students' mastery of learning by their grades, for example. So if that is a question that interests you, please suggest how you might want to go about that, because we've got data that could perhaps help you analyze that. Thank you.
That's great. Rocky Schwedel followed up on the retention data question. She might email you, Marianne. And
Okay,
Rocky,
good.
I copied both Pat and Marianne on the reminder email that I sent yesterday. But if you can't find that, just write to me, albertine@aacu.org, and I'll make sure to get the message to Marianne. And then finally, from Fernando, how was it that you identified the two transparency groups? Is the
Okay.
transparent group the group that followed your framework?
So the way that we identified, the transparent group used that purpose task criteria framework. But more than that, they didn't just receive it, they told us that they had in fact perceived it. So it wasn't just did somebody give it to them, but they filtered back to us through those 9 survey questions that they in fact got it. And that was how we quantified that they had received transparency. Here's another question. What about students taking multiple courses? We are, in fact, there's a question on the survey that says, have you taken any other courses that involve transparent assignments where you talk about the purposes, tasks, and criteria? So we may in the future be able to say that this makes a bigger or smaller difference depending on the number of times a student experiences it.
Mm-hmm.
We ask about that, but we haven't yet analyzed it.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, am I still unmuted?
You are still unmuted, yes.
I wanted to just jump in here. This is such an interesting question about how students become better at understanding purpose and so forth. One of the things that NILOA did in one of our charrettes was to invite faculty to apply as teams. So for instance, we might have had and did someone from an early course, an introductory freshman level course, and someone from a capstone in a major, thinking about issues of alignment around transparency. So some of the outcomes that are being looked at and fostered in an early course can be picked up more explicitly, more transparently than they often are if there's some collaboration between faculty across sort of different kinds of pathways.
Great. Great. Other questions we may have addressed? Oh, wait, here's one. Going back to self-identification of grasping transparency, what percentage of students within a course where the professor tried to provide a transparent assignment?
I think this might be asking about alignment between when the teacher implements this, do the students receive it? Wait, self-identified.
Maybe if I can kind of explain my question a little better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. From what I've heard, it seems like not all the students who were in a course where the professor has tried to engage in a transparent assignment design actually indicate that they have grasped that purpose, task, and criteria. Is that correct? Or
so students will have different individual responses to those 9 questions, right? They're all on a scale of, I think, 1 to 4, those particular 9 questions.
right.
So what we do is we look at the mean response for all students in a course to get the amount of transparency for that course. What we haven't yet done is look at any kind of pattern of who are the students that respond in a low way to those questions versus a high way to those questions across all the courses. We could do that. We have that data, but we just haven't analyzed it that way yet.
But in all the data, all the other graphs that you've shown, those are all the students that were in a course that was self-identified as a transparent course, transparent
Correct.
assignment course.
Yeah. So we took the mean number for a course to say whether that course was more transparent or less transparent. And then when we looked at the way students responded to confidence levels, we looked at all the students in that course.
I think I'm
Students
following.
self-identified. So in other words, it doesn't matter what the professor tried to do. So you only identified those courses that were essentially above the mean on the overall 9-question assignment.
Those ended up as the courses that we labeled to be more transparent courses. And the courses that were less transparent as identified by the mean response to 9 questions by all students in that course. So you wouldn't end up in a scenario where students who are just better at seeing transparency are in one group, and then students from the same course could also end up in the less transparent group. We classified it by course.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
I mean, the idea is to try and figure out how this particular intervention, which is very clear and elegant, could serve to make a big change, in equitable outcomes. And that's kind of a, kind of holy grail, because we throw these big frameworks at things, and for a lot of folks, it's too confusing. But the idea of transparency is so understandable, so intuitive. I think that more people can work with it, and it appears it would have just an amazing outsized kind of impact. We always say high impact practices are great, but they, if they're not done well, they don't have the impact. But if you can focus on transparency, you're going to get some measurable impact that gets you right to the quality of what the students are doing.
Have you looked at the correlation? I'll stop. One more question. Have you looked at the correlation between transparency ratings and faculty evaluation ratings in general?
We started to do that, and what we noticed was a not significant, slightly better evaluation score for courses that were deemed to be more transparent. But it wasn't an exciting or big difference, and our numbers were small enough for those faculty who were willing to share their scores before and after with us that we didn't say that in the publication. I'd love to do more of that and really compare what difference it makes, but I think a better comparison would be before and after. So our teachers were doing the 2 sections simultaneously, and I'd love to see what happens to a teacher who takes their teacher evaluation scores the first time they teach the course, and then the next time they teach the course, they implement the assignment, and then we watch what happens to those scores. We haven't set it up quite that way yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it might be that the language of transparency, your sort of 3 categories in the framework, would be an interesting lens for looking at the questions that get asked on a rating form. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if there were questions that actually tried to tease out sense of purpose and task and criteria?
Good idea. There are 2 more questions, Marianne. If you are in year 2, do you ask students if they enroll in courses because of the transparency of assignments? It sounds like an idea.
Well, students don't necessarily know if they're in a more or less transparent course.
Mm-hmm.
We left it to the teachers to describe their efforts in whatever way they chose. Part of what we wanted to do was to be sure, we provided a template, purpose, task, and criteria, but we wanted to see what would happen if teachers use this at their own discretion in a way that is consistent with their own teaching style, so that we could say, anybody goes off and tries this, you can expect to see results like we saw. So we didn't prescribe that they had to give a particular definition or announcement at a particular time. Participation beyond their help in distributing the survey feedback that led
Did
you?
faculty provide any
Oh.
feedback that led you to modify your survey questions?
I have